It's on the NAACP Baton Rouge branch page.
She said, son, you don't understand. There's a reason why I'm calling on that name.
All right, it is live, y'all.
That's the name that's above every name. There's a reason why I'm calling on that name, Jesus. And you know what she told that young boy? She said, come here, let me tell you why I call on that name. Savior, Savior. Come on. Savior, Savior. Anybody know him as the Savior?
Not too well once, but that's all right.
Hey, Elliot.
I thought that would be upstairs.
All right. Fairly, we can kick it off when you're ready.
Okay, well, Mr. President, I think you're gonna kick it off for us, right? I'm ready when you are.
I am pulling up my notes here. My Wi-Fi is moving a lot slower than I would hope on this side. Go ahead and get y'all to share to your news feeds on your social media. And we are there. So we are about to get started. I'm going to switch to gallery view while we're getting started so everybody can see us on social media. Our illustrious panelists here. I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves there in just a second. But, you know, we want to honor Black history this month through historic preservation. And at some point, we're going to wait for another panelist or two to join us. And then we're going to talk about this month's Black History Month's Black Excellence Award. And this is the first time the NAACP branch is recognizing folks for Black excellence. And this year we're going to recognize Anthony Kimball, Mr. Brown, and Tevin Wade. Tevin Wade. So we're going to be putting that out here later tonight. Byron, as soon as I can sit down and finish that graphic, we're gonna press send on that and honor those brothers for the great work that they're doing in the community. So without further ado, we want to welcome you here to the NAACP Baton Rouge branch. I see our illustrious members on the call. And I also see Mr. Eric Dexter, Mr. Byron Washington. We got Doc on the line. Just corrected me earlier. I think I called her by her first name, and that was all Brittany's fault, Doc.
Don't make an issue out of that, okay? Yeah. It's okay. You don't know. Yeah, please don't make an issue out of it. But yes, I appreciate being here, and thanks for inviting me.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And I'm gonna get it right from now on because Brittany ain't gonna introduce you no more.
Oh, all right.
Yes, ma'am. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our illustrious panelist. She leads historic preservation here in Louisiana, and she's also our newly minted membership chair. Ms. Farley Cook-Jackson, I'm going to let you get rolling.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. And I'm incredibly honored to be able to be with you all today and facilitate this panel. The people that are participating are incredible historians, activists, and really engaged in historic preservation. And just, you know, a quick story about how Eugene and I met. We were actually engaged, and Eugene and Brittany as well, in a discussion about the creation of a National Register district, where we all realized there was a lack of input from the community in which that district was created. So, you know, we have a very strong sense that preservation is for all. And it really opened my eyes to what was happening in Baton Rouge, and knowing that, you know, there was a lot of work to do on behalf of our organization to do outreach and work with community members about what they envision for their communities and uplifting what they envision for their communities. So as I talked to Eugene about this, I wanted to do a brief introduction and talk very briefly, because we have so much to hear about from our panelists, but talk very briefly about the tools available for communities. So our organization is Preserve Louisiana. We were founded in 1963 as the Foundation for Historical Louisiana. So a lot of what we do is advocate for tax credits, do community outreach, work with communities for what they envision and how they see historic preservation working within their communities to revitalize and support their communities as they exist. So a few of those things are the federal historic tax credit that we support on the federal level, the state historic tax credit that we support on the state level. And what these do is they provide a tax credit for people who are renovating spaces and places in communities through the National Register districts or through our cultural districts. And it's a 20% tax credit. Sometimes it is what is needed to actually make renovation and rehabilitation possible. And those are through districts that we're going to hear about from our panelists and individual listings that we're going to hear about from our panelists. The other thing that we advocate for is the Historic Preservation Fund. So this is a huge allocation that we have to have reallocated every year through Congress. And what this funds is our State Historic Preservation Office, but it also funds a lot of things that people aren't aware of. It is the largest provider of dollars for preservation for historically Black colleges and universities. It's also the largest entity that allocates dollars for civil rights grants on the federal level. It also funds Sacred Places, which has been a pivotal grant making mechanism for historically Black churches. And then we also work on the local level, and a lot of the people on this call, especially Brittany, and then really Byron, when I introduce them, you'll learn more, really understand is the local landmark designation process, whether it's an individual listing or a district designation. So these are all the tools in which are in place where we can preserve the stories of our Black communities and continue to do that through outreach and efforts by a lot of the panelists on this call. So I know we're waiting for Anthony Kimball to join us. So when he gets in, I'll go ahead and introduce him. So I'll move on to Byron Washington. And I'm going to make this very brief because I think you're going to learn a lot about these panelists and the work that they're doing through the questions that we're going to answer and the discussions that we're going to have. Byron Washington is first really relevant to this topic. He is a member of the Historic Preservation Commission as far as Baton Rouge goes. So he is a designee on that commission and a voting member that helps to, further historic preservation on a local level. Further than that, he is also leading the National Register district nomination for Scotlandville, and I think still the president of North Baton Rouge now, correct? Yes, and just, a wealth of information when it comes to the history of Baton Rouge that is really unparalleled to many people that I know. So that's Byron. And that's just like a snippet of Byron. Let me make that clear. I'd like to now introduce Brittany Zeno. Brittany Zeno is the director of the Old South Baton Rouge Economic Redevelopment Group. And this is a newer organization, and Brittany has been just hitting the ground running, looking at everything possible to move South Baton Rouge forward, including incorporating preservation into that and making that an integral role in her job. So she is the lead on the Old South Baton Rouge National Register District nomination. and also just so well versed and knowledgeable about the history of South Baton Rouge. And when I tell y'all that these are the people leading the National Register district nominations, that is a huge task. So I really want to reiterate that, and we'll get to that at some point. But that's Brittany Zeno. And I don't think I need to introduce Eugene because we all know Eugene, and I gave a little backstory about how we met and became engaged in preservation as well. But I will say that when Eugene was running for Metro Council, it was very clear that Eugene has and is invested in how historic preservation can benefit Black communities. So that's a brief synopsis of our panelists. And if it's okay, Mr. President, I'd love to jump into the discussion.
No, let's kick this thing off. I'm ready to go. So I'm excited about this, and you've done a phenomenal job of putting this together. So I'm excited about this conversation and our esteemed panelists here. You got a good group here, so I'm excited to hear from these experts.
Well, and I think one thing that's pretty awesome is that we all have a connection and that we've worked together. Some of us daily, a lot of us weekly, and it's been really an honor to get to know all of y'all. So with that said, and I think you all know me well enough to know that I'm going to come at you with some kind of questions from here, questions from there. So my first question is to everyone on the panel. And I would say, if you were talking to yourself 10 years ago and someone told you that you should get involved in historic preservation and that it could impact Black communities, what would have been your first thought? And you've got to put aside everything that you know now as leaders and all of that. But what would you have thought? Brittany, you're making a face, so it makes me want to call on you. Now she's covering her face like she turned off her TV.
Allie, could you hit that question for us one more time?
Sure. I would say 10 years ago, before you actually got engaged in the work that you're doing right now, when you heard the term historic preservation, what did you think of?
I'm gonna be quite honest with you. Before I educated myself, I would say I thought historic preservation was just taking care of old buildings. I think after I became educated on the topic, I learned that it was so much more than just taking care of old buildings, right? But I would say that was my thought, that this was just about taking care of old buildings, and not, the deeper delve that I know now. And I don't, I would think that's probably the general public. When you think about historic preservation, is taking care of old buildings, maybe restoring old houses.
Yeah.
I would say 10 years ago, I would say, I would honestly say, how is that relevant to Black communities? Just because, kind of like Eugene said, I would have looked at the landscape and seen that typically, unless it's a really high profile Black establishment or place, that we really weren't involved with that. So I guess the question would be more about what's its relevancy? I mean, I understood it existed, but you really just didn't see a lot of really, I mean, to be frank, a lot of non-white spaces and places outside of a few mainstream spots. So I mean, I think every Black person has a kind of knowledgeable Rolodex of quote unquote sacred spaces that are mainstream, but once you learn about more the in-depth knowledge of historic preservation, you understand there's a lot of places that deserve that same attention that historically hasn't. I mean, and there's nuances to that, to those reasons why, but yeah, I would have said, I don't see 10 years ago, I would have said, question, how is that relevant to helping the Black community?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering. So Byron, to follow up with you, what has changed since then? Is it just more knowledge about the tools and things out there, or do you feel like there's a movement in preservation for this?
Well, before I answer that, I'm gonna let Brittany go first. I know she just unmuted herself, so Brittany, I'm gonna put you on the spot first.
I didn't see
I
that she
saw her.
unmuted herself.
Oh, I
Okay.
saw.
Thank you, Byron. That's why you're my friend. You remember to put me on the spot every time.
I try to put you on the spot, and you went like this.
Okay, so 10 years ago, in Old South, that was 2010. So, well, no, 2011. And so in 2011, that was like right after everyone had then came to South Baton Rouge, and they had got to the point where they were trying to do the first historic district nomination, which I think they started that in like 2005, 2006, and then it came to a halt. And a lot of other things they made plans to do, and then it just came to a stop. So at that time, if I would have been approached, I would have been, at me being approached 10 years ago, I would have been more so to the point of being, well, they were going to do it, so why did they not do it? So what would make me want to pick up and do this here? But even, and I was kind of leery of it, but I've heard so many stories. I've heard all of my elders from the community speak and talk on it. Even when I had the conversation with Byron one day, and he enlightened me of a lot of things that were going on. But 10 years ago, I was kind of into it, but not so much into it as far as historic preservation. Like, I knew basically what it was, but most of when it came to saying historic preservation, it was probably about 10 years ago when I really started to learn about what it did and how it helped the communities and what were the upsides of it and what were the downsides of it. Because usually when people say historic preservation, you just think that it's okay. You're trying to save a building, you're trying to save a house. It's been here for a couple of years, or my grandmother stayed here, or her grandmother stayed here. And so we just need to keep it because it was something that was in my family. But it's so much more to that, because it tells the story of that community. It tells the story of that city. It tells the story of that state. And it tells the story of that country. And that is what I came to learn over the years. But 10 years ago, I was in the beginning steps of learning the importance of the historic district, not historic district, of historic preservation in itself.
Byron, did you want to add after that?
No, I was going to ask you, can you rephrase your follow-up again? Because I was into listening to Brittany. I forgot about it.
Well, I know. Now I'm kind of like, what did I ask Byron again? I think I wanted you to expand on your last point, but I think I would actually like to expand on something that you both said. And I don't want to make assumptions, but as the white woman facilitating this, I want to say, a lot of the feedback I've been given is that, preservation has been predominantly white, right? It's been around white spaces. It's been around antebellum homes. It's been around what could benefit predominantly white spaces. So I'm wondering if that too, is a part of why we're seeing kind of an invigoration of preservation in Black communities as well. So I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, do you think that's possible too?
I would say to that, the reason it's been only white spaces is because it's the golden rule. Who holds the gold? They have historically been able to kind of deem what's worth being preserved and what's not. And so the idea in all of our communities of what's preservation, it looks a certain way, it feels a certain way, because that is what's been disseminated to us, that as in that is what is ideal or of value for historic preservation. And when we look at now, kind of fast forwarding now, is that we're looking at the terms of what historic preservation are, because we're not just looking at what we've been told, we're looking at the documents, we're looking at the agencies and what they're deeming as such, and we're looking at the focuses. We're saying, well, hold on a second, there's value within our communities, extreme value within our communities, that is not going to look like for like. You mentioned something like, you're not going to have too many in any Black community. You're not going to have a pristine multi-million-dollar or $6-figure $1,000 investment into like an antebellum home. Those things aren't going to happen, and there's reasons for that. But nonetheless, it still doesn't devalue the home of like an Eddie Robinson, for example, or the home of Dr. Clark from Southern University, and all
Or
these
the
other,
Butler
the
family.
Butler family home, the Cook
Yeah.
Theater, right? The Ant Theater,
Yeah.
and just naming these. I'm just naming these things for references that
Yeah.
no, they're not going to look as from a layman's eye, because they don't have that same financial economic past of investment. But now what we're doing now is saying, well, these things can be available as catalysts for economic development, for highlighting our community. And being frank is that, this is kind of where the crossroads of preservation and profit comes in. Is in the past, preservation is kind of linked to, well, how can we preserve it in a way that makes profit for us, whether it be through tourism, mainly through tourism, right? In Louisiana, I don't know if people should already know this, like we're one of these states when it comes to like that preservation / tourism. That like we're one of those states that's like chairs at the table when it comes to how to do that. But even still, we haven't done the best job of equating that to the full tilling of the Black communities and indigenous communities within the state. And so I think now we're at the nexus of, we've taken the rules per se of what you say, these are the parameters, and now we're going to take that and kind of run with it and see what we can make do within our own specific spheres.
Such good input, Byron. And then I would add to that, beyond tourism, I mean, the economic development of revitalization through historic preservation spans to, creating more businesses and economic spaces in places where they're not there, to housing opportunities. I mean, there's so much more ways for us in this community to actualize and realize the benefits of historic preservation. So, but Brittany, did you want to add to that, or do y'all want me to go on to the next? Or Eugene, it looked like you had something to say, Eugene.
No, I actually think it's just probably, I love the way the conversation starting off, right? And I'd rather just go to the next question, because I think we're heading in a good direction here.
Okay, so Byron, you actually touched on this in what you were talking about. These kind of economic, but there's the kind of dual benefits of these, and I'm going to talk about National Register districts right now with both Byron and Brittany and Eugene too. Obviously there's the federal tax credit that becomes available, and that's kind of the economic impact for dollars for community revitalization. But tell us why you felt compelled, Byron, Scotlandville, Brittany, Old South Baton Rouge, why did you feel compelled to work on this National Register district nomination that is not easy, takes a lot of time, costs a lot of money, which involves grants and all of that. Tell us why you felt this was so important.
For me, it was important because it goes back to the base of it all, right? How are we able to change our conditions within our communities? And so I looked at models locally of, prime example being like downtown, and how was downtown able to change over the 20, 30-year period in the way that it did. And two things kept coming up, national register, and then, local districts, and also culture districts. And, these things kept crossing over. And so doing research, and I saw within a community like Scotlandville, which I lived in, working with Northern Rouge now, and I saw a prime opportunity to use that same model as a springboard catalyst for the very things that we've been harping for. I mean, there's plans that have been 20, 30 years on the shelf for this community and for other communities, but we've never found that nexus to how do we catapult this into the next level. And so when you start digging in deep about the oral histories in the communities around Baton Rouge, you start to see more and more like, man, it's a lot of untapped gold here that has yet to be kind of varnished out to allow people to really see it for what it is. And so, you take that challenge because it hasn't happened yet before. It needs to happen. And if it's going to happen, it needs to be from an authentic, organic organization within that community. Because a lot of times you'll have, just for financial gains, some people may have the financial means to go and just do it automatically and do it to get the tax credits and the other things that come with it, which are great. But when you do it from an authentic, organic side of that equation, you get to really learn. The people in the community are engaged. They know what's going on. Whether they like it or not, they at least know what's going on. So they can't kind of say like they're unaware. But, you get those stories that don't necessarily make it into all of the headlines. You get to flesh those things out. And then now, Lord willing, within the next, few months or so, we'll be able to tell its full story and put the city and its communities, and I'm speaking not for myself, but for the work that Brittany's doing as well. We get to put these communities in a limelight that people from Baton Rouge and the greater Baton Rouge area can be proud of. And this is not necessarily an effort just for Scotlandville or just for Old South Baton Rouge. This is an effort that kind of springboard for all the communities within Baton Rouge and surrounding areas to begin, especially from the African American side, to start to do this type of thing. Because now we're looking at how do we look at now Baton Rouge in the light of its statewide relevancy in the African American community, and then also in the national relevancy. So you get to see things comparison wise. So kind of we're looking pretty good here. But now we're getting into that realm. And again, I hark back to it's very important that you have the authentic and organic organizations taking the lead on these initiatives, even if they are time consuming. And it's very much so, but you have to do it. Otherwise, you have other people coming in and telling your story, and a lot of times they tell your story mainly just for profit.
Yeah, that's such a really great point. All of those, and we've seen it happen where developers come in and identify an area. We had one here in Baton Rouge that was designated. The community was not really involved. They did kind of the, and I hate to say this, but the token reach out to one Black church and assume that you reached out to the community. And that's how some of us met, was talking about this, and that was not the way to do that. And so, Byron, what you just spoke to is absolutely the way that all of this should happen. These benefits and everything should come from within the community. And the other thing that I wanted to add to that too is with the National Register, you're talking about telling the story locally, statewide, nationally, so what's on the National Register is like the story of a space for perpetuity. And I think that's the thing that gets me so excited is it's like, it's a story told by the community about the community that then lives on for perpetuity in the National Register held by the National Park Service and the Department of the Interior. So I commend you so much for this work. And I know, Brittany, you have a lot to add to this in your work too.
Yeah, now what made me want to start the process, like Byron says, it is very hard, it's very tiresome, it's a lot of research, it's a lot of people saying they gonna help and they gonna be there, and then when the meeting come or they supposed to show up, is you. And you don't stop, you keep going. But in Old South Baton Rouge is in a very unique position as it's concerned between downtown and LSU. And if you are from Old South Baton Rouge, you always hear the elders. They love to say, if something's being brought, LSU's buying it. LSU's buying it, and they trying to buy us up, and they trying to push us out and this and that. But over time, you learned that as you got older and you watched, and you learned that they were not lying. It was so true. And as those elders that constantly fought to make sure that, you know, they paid their taxes, they kept their houses up, they made sure that, you know, they owned their land. Once it passed down to, you know, some of their family or their children, they didn't understand the importance of holding on and having your, and, you know, the importance of having the importance of owning the land. And so what ended up happening is, and voting and so on and so forth. So now Old South, which was a 2.5 square mile radius community, Black community, one of the first in Baton Rouge, has the oldest Black school in the state of Louisiana. This community that was once 2.5 square miles is now dwindled down to 1.5 because it's been rezoned. And a part of this community has now been taken and renamed Downtown East. So, and this like many say, that this narrative has been rewritten. So when they write it and you read on Downtown East doesn't say that it was once part of a predominantly Black community that, you know, was where the first nurses, doctors, you know, all these, you know, professors and all these people lived. And, you know, it was a thriving community. It doesn't say that. When you do the research on Downtown East, it says something about a mix of, it's rewritten to say a mix of citizens. It doesn't say a minority Black. It's because they've now changed the name and it's been rewritten. So with that being done, if you don't go and do the work of, you know, the historic district and being able to hold on to the story and tell the story as it should be told, then you're giving room for the story to be rewritten, for them to write it as they see fit. And if you don't pay attention and you don't sit up there and you listen and you hold on to the stories that the elders have told you, then you're giving them room to rewrite it. If you don't fight for it, you don't make sure that these stories are being told, and you're not, you know, holding on to, well, when they say something and you're there to correct them, because you're not in this room when they're in this room talking about it, then now that story has been rewritten because it's not on paper. What's on paper is what they've written down and put on the website and what they put in the book, and you had no part of that. So that was like one of my main reasons for you know, going through this process of going through and doing all this work, because I had a nana, and my nana, she loved her house. My nana she was born in this house, she died in this house. The house is still in the same spot on Thomas H. Delp. It was Texas Street then. I have one of my nannies. She instilled me, it's not where you live, it's how you live. And with her telling me that means it doesn't matter if her house costs $10,000 or $100,000. It's how you live in your house. It doesn't matter if you spend all this money on it, or you know, it's how you keep it up. And so and when it comes to South Baton Rouge, when you look at South Baton Rouge has a mix of everything. So you're going to see the expensive houses now, and you're going to see the inexpensive houses. You're going to see a shotgun house. You're going to see a 10-bedroom. I mean, not a 10, but 5-6 bedroom house. You know, you're going to see all of these different. You're going to see a whole bunch of mixes of houses and buildings. And when you listen to these stories, you get all of this different information. But to hold on to, because a lot of the buildings are not there anymore because they've been considered like they've shut down due to the interstate. I mean, you know, with the interstate coming through, it's been so much things where things were there and now they're not there. And if no one's holding on to the stores or getting the information from the stores, when the older generation dies, it's a story that's gone and you can never get it back again. And
yeah,
so
and you're doing, Brittany, you're doing some oral histories along with your National Register nomination, aren't you?
Yeah, we're doing some oral histories. Then we took the some inserts from the McKinley did some oral interviews also. So we took parts from theirs also. And like we just want to be able to tell the story because no two people are going to tell the story exactly, you know, the same. With anything that happens, you're going to hit every time the story is told, it's going to be told different. And one person may tell it and it lights a fire on the one person as opposed to the other person telling it, and it's more interesting in the way they say it. So I just want to be able to tell the story and protect what's left and have it where it doesn't downsize any more than what it already has.
Right. Well, I think you both hit on the importance of the National Register District kind of documenting for perpetuity. I had hoped that has Anthony been able to join us yet? Do we know? Have you seen him, Eugene? I don't want to scroll through.
I hadn't seen him join yet.
Haven't seen him yet. Okay. Because, well, then I'm just going to speak a little bit to, you know, Anthony is someone who has been putting this economic benefit, these tax credits in action with his Buy Back the Block and Buy Back Baton Rouge initiative, where he is getting interested Black investors to buy properties in these districts that are designated to use that tax credit to keep those businesses within the community and those properties within the community by the community. It's definitely worth looking into his efforts and looking up his Facebook page. Also, you know, I wanted to distinguish between the difference between the National Register District and the local landmark district local landmark. Yeah.
Can I add something to what Brittany said? Because
please, absolutely. Please, y'all just jump in. I'm not trying to take over. Like,
oh, no. And something Brittany said that kind of stood out is she talked about the downtown east aspect of things, right? And I hear people say that, right? And I totally agree with Britt. But I was talking to somebody this a few days ago who grew up very near there, and I did as well. And we both was like, hey, it really don't matter what other folks call it, because like we go in the community, you say downtown east, nobody even know what you're talking about, right? Yeah. That's only for folks that don't live there, that have titled something, and you can talk about it on the other side of the town all you want. The folks that live there don't call it downtown east. But to add to something she said, because this is the first time that has been attempted in that particular zone, right? We look at it in there, probably around 1919, the early 20s, right around the time that you saw Africa Street disappear, become Louisiana Avenue, and Mayflower was a street that was called Asia Street before then. So you start to see streets disappear. And if you Google this, you'll find that residents got together who were new to the area and decided that they didn't want to live on Africa Street anymore. They didn't want to live on Asia Street. So they put a petition together to change those streets to Mayflower and Louisiana Avenue. So, and I just throw it out there because this street conversation heats up. I would love to see Africa Street, Asia Street come back, right? Keep Lee Drive, give us Africa Street back. So that means turn Louisiana Avenue to Africa Street.
I'm like, we can do away with both, can't we? Like, you know.
I feel you. We can do both, right? But I bring that up to say, you know, when you look at that aspect, and you talked about Anthony Kimball, and I know he's a very astute guy, so he probably knows this. The very first time that the proposed gentrification, and it was already moving at that point, right? right? It was stopped by a group of outside businessmen that came together and developed South Baton Rouge and created business that was led by T. Till Lane and Dr. Leo S. Butler. And it's wild that, now you see a group of young Black men essentially almost doing the exact same thing some 90 years later, right? And I've just always wondered if they realize that. And I got to think they have, right? I got to think they have. But
that's it. That's such a fascinating point, Eugene. I hadn't thought about, knowing the Leo S. Butler story, knowing Anthony's story. Brittany, had you thought about it like that? I hadn't really thought that 90 years later, but that's like pretty fascinating. That's pretty cool.
Well, something that's interesting to think about, and I know Brittany and I have talked about this before, is that we have to we have to kind of be in our own communities, challenge people in our community to not be so not dismissive of things that are going on, because to be frank, downtown East as a formation and title doesn't happen if those in our communities don't dismiss it and say, oh, they ain't got nothing to do with us. If people who had knowledge of such things, or people who can hear such things and say, you know what, I'm going to go to this DDD meeting or something like that, or whatever the case is. I'm not just trying to pick on downtown development, but just the example is already out there, so I'm just kind of using it. That if people are there, then you can go and voice and say, well, I don't think it's appropriate to rename something from a marketing redistricting standpoint. And I think now we have to do that same challenge to tell people, say, hey, when these things are happening at these planning meetings and these councils and stuff like that, pay attention. Don't just be dismissive and think, well, that ain't got nothing to do with us. They're gonna do, the growing word within our community is they're gonna do it.
They're gonna do it anyway.
Anyway, right?
No matter what,
so
no matter what you want, they're gonna do it anyway. So I ain't got time for it.
So, but
you go do it and you let me know what they tell you.
Right. And then what happens is that we say that, and then 6 months to a year later, when the changes happen, we're upset. We're like, wait, what happened? How can you let this happen? And it's like, well, no, you just told us they was gonna do what they're gonna do anyway. So
I blame they let us say whoever the council person is, they getting all the smoke at that time.
Right.
I blame the council person. I'm like, but you can't blame them for the interstate. The interstate, they did this here in 1990.
Right.
Who was the council person in 1990? Oh, well, how old were you in? I say you're in your 60s now. So how old were you in 1990? Well, I was such and such. Well, I was 4, so I was 4 years old, so I had no control over it. But I'm pretty sure you were an adult at that time, right? Well, I wasn't worried about it then, but I'm worried about it now. But this is when I'm like, did you read the papers? No. Did you go to the meetings? No. You have to You have to do something. You can't get mad. Once you start getting mad when they announce it, it's already done. The papers are signed. The money has been dispersed, and they working on it now. It's you. Well, what you gonna do? It's nothing I could do.
If you rely solely upon your council person to be the voice within those meetings, then you've already lost. You cannot just say whoever the council person is, oh, well, we voted for them, they'll handle it. That's not how this works. If anybody's ever been to a council meeting, and Eugene can speak to this because we've both been there multiple times for multiple issues, is that when you have a crew or a group of people coming to the council meeting to voice their opinion for or against a specific topic, those things hold weight. So it's not just the council person sitting in those chambers giving their opinion, but now that council person is hearing the voice of the constituents in that community in those chambers or in those meetings. And that's just a council meeting, but whatever the case meeting is. I'll talk about HPC. We have an open meeting. Anybody can come in and voice their opinions about stuff all the time. And to be honest, the number one community that comes in and will and literally dictates what happens as far as historic preservation within their community is Spanish Town. Whether you like it or not, the people in Spanish Town will be there. They will let you know. If you are a developer, if you're coming in to build something, they don't like a doorknob that you choose. They will let you know, and we have to listen to the opposition, take all of those things into account, and a lot of times have to challenge that developer to go back and to go back into the guidelines of what the community wants. And so that's an example of like, hey, this is not
that's
just
a good example, because she is, if not one, at least one person is there to sit up there and stand up for their community. But if not even one person is there to voice an opinion for the other people, then no, the information doesn't get back. No one else knows until it's on paper. And once it's on paper, half the time it's too late.
It's too late.
So this is interesting because I was going to bring up local issues, which, we're talking about HPC right now. We only have a handful of local districts. The HPC does not deal with National Register districts. They do not deal with National Register entities. Even if they're individual listings, they only deal with the very small handful of local districts that we have, and the even smaller, we're getting there, the handful of local landmark designations individually that we have. And this is interesting because this local designation is really the only thing that protects properties. So as just about everyone on this panel knows, but the people watching might not know, the National Register does not protect a property. It does nothing to prevent a demolition or anything like that. So, we have local districts that right now I'd say are
all right. So I think fairly froze there is the whole thing.
Oh,
no, I'm still here.
Eugene froze for me.
I'm still good.
I'm good. I see Brittany. Eugene, you froze for me.
Byron, can you still hear me on that?
There you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
And fairly, I got our statewide president here, President Michael McClanahan, as
yay
for the NAACP President Show.
Hey, Mike, Mr. President.
Hello, Fairley. Hello, everyone. How you all doing?
Hello.
Oh, wow.
Good. I'm excited to be here. Eugene was telling me about this a couple years ago, and to see the hard work that you all put into it, man, is phenomenal. I remember the historic districts, man. To get that designation, man, it takes a little bit of work, because they just don't give those designations out. And to create a district where you can start putting plans into action, that person can not. Person want to come and see and tour and put some names and some history behind buildings and landmarks and roads is like what I think is a wonderful, because I'm kind of like a history buff. And so I like old stuff. I didn't keep my clothes to the old, right? And so anything that we can do from the state level or from the national level, because I'm on the national board now. Please let us know, because I know you all are hard workers, and I just want to play a part, whatever small part I can.
Yeah.
Well, and Mike, I just wanted to say, we might chime in later on talking about what we talked about the other day with the Cemetery Commission, because I think that's a piece of this. So maybe we could talk about that later. So I'm so glad you're on, Mr. President.
Yeah, we can, most definitely.
And Dr. Gertie and Dr. Elma has joined us. Y'all just hang tight. We're going to get into that segment in just a bit.
Cool.
Wonderful.
But
so
fairly.
No,
I was just piggybacking what you were saying about the local districts. And this is something I brought up in the past in HPC meetings, is that, local districts are pretty stringent as far as guidelines. And that's probably why, as far as Baton Rouge is concerned, that we don't have as many as say like in New Orleans or even in Lafayette area, because it's very stringent on things that you can and cannot do. But there's been some talk of experimentation. Like right now, Beauregard Town is kind of, they're going to be a guinea pig of working with like a semi, it's going to be a local district, but it's going to be like semi-controlled, meaning that it's not going to have as many strict policies around what you can and can't do. But my voice of concern has always been, when talking about Baton Rouge local district, is In the past, I don't think as much African-American representation of the communities has always been at the table when developing the language in local districts. Because, you know, typically within our communities, we can hold something of dear historic value, but what we don't respond well to is being told what you can and can't do to a home. Again, even if I have no intentions of, you know, painting my house purple and pink, I don't want something to tell me what I can and cannot do, because typically that's never been in our favor of people controlling. You know, we don't have a ton of resources as is. So again, if you tell me what I can and can't do to my resources in my community, that's been an issue. And then likewise is that it's been a ignorance in the truest definition of form. Many of our communities just don't know that this is an option of preserving. So you may see things like I'm talking about within, like, for a prime example, like Southern Heights community I'm in, is that there's always talk about how can we make sure that nobody comes in and puts something, you know, that doesn't kind of go with the character of the community. And I'm telling people now, it's like, it's local districts and they've never heard of it. They don't know anything about that process. They don't know how to build that. And so now it's an educational piece within our communities, because again, we weren't ever at that table or that discussion board to even bring that back, because, you know, as me and Brittany stated before, the attitude has always been they're going to do what they're going to want to do anyway. And so we, you know, now it's all about the language. It's all about the involvement of how can we make sure that our specific cultural pieces and icons are preserved, but as well as there's no, you're not putting non-cultural restrictions upon a community what they can and can't do within a certain parameter.
Definitely, it's an excellent point, and I think the important thing to remember is that when it comes to these local designations, really the power is with the people. You know, the community needs to establish the design guidelines, and that can be an extensive process, but it can also be very cumbersome. And, you know, I'll take it even further. Like, there's a lot of, you know, predominantly white communities that have rejection of local designations because the property rights issue. Like, you know, it's not, you know, it's, you know, don't tell me what to do, you know, and I think that's across the board for property owners everywhere. When you buy and invest in a house, you want to be able to do to that house, but you can, and, you know, all of that. But like, I do think that for preservation's sake, it's something to look at in a more flexible way. So I think we're getting there. And Byron, like, I think with our HPC, you know, we've got more progressive, open-minded people on the HPC now, and we can do that because that's one thing we do have control of locally. But so I wanted to take that, and, you know, those districts are way harder to define, but you both have been invested in leading the charge on local landmark designations for individual properties. So, you know, Byron with Immaculate Conception and Brittany with Newark. So tell us why you felt that was important.
Well, with Newark is one of the older, well, in South Baton Rouge, it's a total of 42 churches in the 2.5 square mile radius. It's a total of 42 churches, the youngest church being 1989. The youngest church before that one is like 1964. The oldest church in the Old South would be, I believe it's 1891. Now Newark is 1909. But I chose Newark because it's an older church, and when we have something to do when it comes within the community, that pastor Wright, he's very helpful. He comes out, he's very supportive, and he's open-minded of what the goal is for Old South Baton Rouge in the long run. So I chose I approached him first because I wanted to see what would be the process as far as, you know, going from step A to Z and making sure that everything is done and getting the steps done. Because a lot of times when you approach some entities and, you know, you have this idea to do something, they're for it. Then it gets to a point where they'll stop. And once you've done so much work, oh, well, no, I don't want to do it. And so he understands, and with him, he understands the importance of having these things done. So I approached them. I approached him. I let him know that, you know, that would be interesting. And then because of the particular architect of the church is unique to, like, it's that particular church isn't built like any of the other churches in South Baton Rouge. It's that one, and it's like probably two other ones that are.
I'll know about
Dr.
this.
Sadie got you.
I'm sorry.
But that church, it's like a lot of members of Old South I know have attended that church. Like that church, the oldest Black nurse in Baton Rouge, she attends that church. The oldest Black teacher, if I'm not mistaken, I think she attends that church. She attended that church, but I know the oldest Black nurse, she's still living. She lives on Taft Street, if I'm not mistaken, in South Baton Rouge. So she still attends the church and everything. So I just thought that would be like the best introduction as far as doing a church. Now I'm looking at, we're reaching out to other churches also. We're reaching out to the second church I think we're trying to do is Little Sun, and I think Little Sun is like 1902, if I'm not mistaken, but that's like the second church on the list. But between New Ark and with the response from New Ark and the response from the Leo S. Butler House, I just thought that those were like the two best beginning individual landmarks for the area.
Yes. So, Brittany is talking about the Leo S. Butler and Estelle Duval Butler House that we listed last year as a local landmark for obviously the history of Dr. Butler and then his wife, and then also, the legacies that have come after them with Lynn Whitfield and Hetty Butler and the incredible family that they have. So these local landmarks are awesome in a way to tell stories on a local level. And I want to say that we are actively always asking, I'm so sorry. I have a crazy cat that she's new. So we're always looking for more nominations that we can facilitate. We can handle the application process. The monetary cost is on the applicant, but we are happy to submit those. And Byron had led off Immaculate Conception, and that was another fantastic nomination that went through this month during Black History Month. So we've had two historic Black churches with Newark and Immaculate Conception go through. So Byron, you want to speak a minute on that?
Yeah, so Immaculate Conception for us, for that church, that was more strategic, right? There's a lot of history within that church of being it's built by its parishioners. It's actually not owned by the diocese. It's actually owned by the actual people of Scotlandville, the people who attend that church, which is it makes it unique amongst you know how the Catholic churches kind of work. The diocese typically owns and runs the buildings and the parishes, but with this one it was unique because what we did is we had a list, because we're doing the National Register individual nominations and the survey, and so Immaculate, for example, was on the list of the individual, but it didn't make the cut because they actually recently did some renovations, which is actually quite beautiful if you see any of the pictures.
Byron, let me stop you for 1 second just to ask you to talk a little bit more about that, because within the National Register District we have what we call cultural assets and architectural assets, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what you're referring to. Can you just tell the audience that might not be familiar with that what that means?
So basically, essentially in National Register, it's 4 different 4 or 5 different categories, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but cultural assets is one of them, meaning that though a building or a place or a space may not look the way it looked exactly at the time it was built or the time period, because of its cultural history, that impact is a category which of its own. And a lot of times it's open to interpretation of the nominating committee to determine if it deems it such. And so some states are a little bit more lenient than others, some areas. And so that's like a kind of separate battle that we're kind of dealing with, even on some other things within just Baton Rouge as a whole. But for just Immaculate Conception purposes, it was kind of, they thought it may not make the individual. And so what we did is that we took a list of spaces and places that may not make the individual for that cultural. It may make it for cultural, but may not, the integrity of the building may not be the same. So Immaculate Conception kind of hit that sweet spot because they did do a recent renovation to the church that made it not look the same way that it was built, but the renovation was beautiful nonetheless. And so it hit right in the spot of local landmarks, because local landmarks don't have that issue. And so while it may not end up being an individual national register location, it will be, a local registration and local designation, and it's going to be within the greater districts that, once we finish up the survey. And so our method is tying in those items that may not, rather than we can contest the cultural aspects of the national register nominations, individual register nominations in a different light, but those that may be of contest, we can go ahead and push local. And so that way, when everything's finished out, we'll have some that may be national and not be local. We'll have some that be local and not be national, a good mix, and we'll have some that'll be both, right? But we want to make sure that all the locations get their designation in some way, form, or fashion, and have some type of, as you say, something written in perpetuity to tell that story. Immaculate Conception is unique because Immaculate Conception is uniquely tied to the Cook Theater because of the Cook family being, they before there was Immaculate Conception, they hosted for the Catholic parishioners in Scotlandville and North Baton Rouge area. They would go to the Cook Theater for their mass, and that would be where they would have mass at. And so it's uniquely tied to that backstory. And so we want to find a way to make sure that all these assets are tied in, because when you're talking about in the community, all of these nominations, whether local or national, are all tied into a same story in some way, form, or fashion. So it's just a way about how do you build that story. So Immaculate being the first one, we'll have some other ones down the road as well too, but we want to make sure that we get that tied in, because it is more than likely that we're going to have the Cook Theater be listed nationally. And so we want to have that, be able to tell at least that story when those two items come together.
And Dr. Cook's presentation on the Cook Theater, he when we did Lost and Found Theaters of Louisiana, that was one of the most fascinating stories. And to hear his personal story of growing up in that theater is the most incredible thing. Eugene, I'm sorry, I think I started talking when you did.
Oh, no problem. I'll just let you know we almost hitting that mark. We've been
okay. Well,
but we can circle back to this conversation, and we feel like we don't have enough time. We got a Dr. Gertie online, and she's going to do some vaccine education. I don't know if you want to stay for that.
Do we have time for one more question, or are we done?
We got time for one more question.
Okay, because I think we've gotten really into like the nitty gritty of the actual tools, but if you could look forward and think of, is Baton Rouge being equitable in its approach to preserving Black history, and what could you recommend to our leadership, whether it's city, parish, state, or federal, to make this easier and make this more equitable and make sure that our Black stories are told?
I'll make this quick. No, they have not been. They're trying to be, but in order to have that story, you need to have. At the end of the day, in order to get the Black story, you got to have Black people involved. There's no other which way around that. You got to have Black people involved. And to me, by excluding the Black story, when you're talking about a city that's 54% Black, a parish that's 47% Black, you can't tell the history of Baton Rouge without Black people. There's no way if ands be about it. And so, and if the city wants to, as a whole, and then this is from top all the way down, if it wants to position itself as this regional or national power, I mean, you know, you have to look really no further than 45 minutes down the road in a city like New Orleans that has taken its Black identity and put it in a way to make it, you know, culturally and relevant to where you can't mention the story of New Orleans without mentioning or really highlighting the Black impact. And so, as well as in Baton Rouge, if it wants to put itself in the position of a regional national power, a place that all people can relocate to, where you can have, you know, places like Amazon and IBMs and stuff like that to come to enter into these spaces and places, that you have to do an equitable job, a much better job than what they've done in the past of telling the Black story. And a lot of times what happens is they tell a story around Black people. So you get a mentioning of Black people and say, you know, in certain areas of not telling why is North Baton Rouge the way it is and what made it happen as such. Why is Florida Boulevard the Mason-Dixon line of Baton Rouge? What's the Black history dealing with downtown Baton Rouge, and why is it not highlighted in such a way that gives honor to its ancestors? You know, these all these other aspects again are really kind of making the city operate with one hand, in my opinion, operate with one hand tied behind its back, because you're not really giving the full breadth of what the potential of this community has been. And that's been a battle, as everybody here understands, that has always been, you know, pick a city in the South, it's the same story. If you don't tell or involve a group of people that's you know 40+% of your population, then you're really not taking advantage of all the resources and tools to make your city, location, region, state as great as it can be. So that's my short answer.
All right, and fella, we're way over now. We gotta wrap it up, but you know, fairly, and to our esteemed panelists on the historic preservation here today, we want to just thank you for educating the folks on this topic today. And a lot was learned here today. So with that said, we're going to transition into the next thing. And like I said, Fairly, I know you had a ton of vaccine questions, and so there's other folks on this call. So I want to turn it over to Dr. Gertie and President McClanahan and lead into that part. We're a few minutes over, but not too much. So at this point, I want to make Dr. Gertie, you're going to be the host, so you can share your screen. All right. And you are the host, so you can share your screen.
Okay.
So I want to go ahead and flip this camera to President McClanahan as well, so that he can moderate this thing. So Dr. Gertie, you are up. You can now share your screen. You should have the ability to do that.
All right.
All right. Good afternoon. I want to thank Eugene and for always being on point, for providing information that would make our community more sustainable, more reactive to the things that matter in our community, because I believe and I know that knowledge is power. And I got a call from one of my friends, really my accountant, Charles O'Para, and he was talking to me about vaccinations. We were talking about the COVID, and we understood because we saw some numbers, some data that said that we make up 30% of the population in Louisiana, but we only 13% of that 30% was vaccinated. But the other part was that we make up a large percentage of the deaths as a result of COVID. And that was astounding. That was atrocious. And immediately I was like, that cannot be. What do we need to do? And in that same breath, he said, hold on, let me call my friend. And he put me in contact with Dr. Gertie. We must have talked for a couple of hours. I put some people on the call with us to find out what could we do to stem the tide, to turn the corner away from being the receiving end of the most deaths in Louisiana as a result of the COVID are Black people? How can we stem the tide, turn those numbers around so that it will not affect us adversely or as harshly as it's doing? And so Dr. Gertie said, well, Mike, if you can give me an opportunity to tell people what I know, to show people what I know, hopefully we can begin to stem the tide on this day. So that's when I got in contact with Dr. Gertie. Dr. Gertie, I appreciate you spending time with us on a Sunday afternoon, because I know your time is valuable, but to be able to tell us information about how we're going to stem the tide on these deaths caused by the coronavirus, everyone needs to be listening, and that we're going to continue to spread this information out because it's saving lives. If we can save one more life, I think it's worth it. So go ahead, Doc.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I'm really grateful to be invited here today. Can you all see my slide?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I'm just going to introduce a little bit brief so that people can follow me when I make this presentation. Briefly, I'm going to talk about the anatomy of the virus itself, the COVID-19 virus. We all have heard of it described as coronavirus because of its shape. It's round. That's why it's the coronavirus. Everybody has heard about the spike protein. This right here, on here, those are sounding like spikes. That's what gives it the name spike protein. Over here is the RNA enclosed in protein. And this is the lipid membranes. So these are areas that, there are multiple areas. This particular virus has about 20-something proteins that technically it's possible for us to target to stop this virus. But the best one is this spike protein that's at the top, because it uses the spike protein to attach itself to the ACE2 receptors when it gets to our cells. ACE2 stands for angiotensin converting enzyme 2. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of technical scientific names, but I just want you to understand that once it attaches itself to this receptor, it makes it into a cell. It utilizes the enzymes and other things that are in our cell cytoplasm to reproduce itself, and it produces more of the virus, and that this virus goes and affects another cell. There are certain organs in our body that have a lot of these receptors that are called ACE2 receptors. They are the lungs, the heart, the kidney, even the brain. They all have this receptor. So those organs tend to be more affected than others. Also, it affects the vascular system. So there are common questions about vaccine in our communities that I'm going to try to answer. There is the main one, which is the vaccine hesitancy in the minority communities. I want to address that the most. This picture here shows when I was getting my second COVID-19 vaccine in early January. I got my first dose in December. So recent CDC data on minorities and COVID-19, it suggests that Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans are about 4 times more in terms of hospitalization for COVID than white people. It also shows that we are nearly 3 times likely to die of COVID-19 than white people. However, we have white Americans are getting vaccinated at a rate 3 times more than Black Americans. The CDC has all this data. I mean, it's, when you look at it, you'll be like, what's happening to our people? Now, there's recent Family Foundation poll that suggested that 35% of Black Americans do not plan to get the vaccine, and their concerns are usually safety and the newness of the vaccines. So I'm going to try today to address these issues. Why is there so much vaccine hesitancy in the minority communities? We go back to the facts of the matter. There is racism in medicine. There is racism in healthcare. There is racism in government policies. We all know this. In the past, Black people have felt violated in the arena of medicine and science. We know the example of the Tuskegee syphilis experiment in 1932, where we had Black men who were intentionally denied treatment, even though penicillin was available, leading to a lot of morbidity and mortality. Another example is the Henrietta Lacks case, which they used her cancer cells to do medical research and did not inform her, did not compensate her. Even today, Black people still face inequalities in healthcare. And so a lot of Black people do not trust the system. We are skeptical and hesitating to take this vaccine. It's understandable. I want us to remember that in terms of vaccine, it's actually a black man's innovation. You see, it was a slave that told his master, a black slave, told his master that, listen, when we were in a village in Africa and people will have this pox, they will take the fluid from the pox from the person that's infected and cut someone else that doesn't have it and put it in there, and it helped them prevent the same disease. And so when they tried it, they found out that it worked. That's actually the genesis of vaccination. Now, let us talk about the messenger RNA platform, the vaccine that's produced by Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna. They utilize the messenger RNA vaccine platform. This platform has been 3 decades in the making. It's not totally new. Dr. Kathleen Carrico started working on this platform in the 1990s. She figured, her theory was that since the messenger RNA is usually involved in disease, when it goes bad, you can have disease process. So if we utilize the same messenger RNA technology produced synthetically, we can use it to combat disease. At the time, she wasn't thinking about using it for vaccine. However, she met with a lot of disappointments on her way, but she didn't give up. In 1990, at the University of Wisconsin, they were able to make this like a theory work on actual mice, but they had problems. The problems included synthetic nature of the messenger RNA was unstable, and that unstable state could lead to immune response, which was intended risk to some patients. So 15 years later, in 2005, they figured out the solution to that problem, and they tried to use this technology even for Ebola vaccine recently, a few years ago. What happened in 2020? We had COVID-19 pandemic. So this 30 years preparation met an opportunity, and they decided to put this platform to work. I want us to remember that minorities worked on this vaccine. Dr. Kizzy Colbert is a part of the team of scientists in the NIH that worked on the Moderna vaccine. Dr. Fauci said Kizzy is an African-American scientist who is right at the forefront of the development of the vaccine. I also know people that have worked on this vaccine. People I know personally, I'm in the same infectious disease committees with them. They are Nigerians, they are Africans, and they are Black people that have worked on this vaccine. Vaccines work. This picture I'm showing is showing us in Ireland, the 1950s and 2019. And you see how this big bubble of measles was in 1950? See how tiny it has become by 2019? And diphtheria became zero, polio was eradicated, rubella is almost eradicated. And you see this right here is pertussis. This is to show that vaccines do work, because that's the difference between 1950 and 2019 about all these diseases. So how do vaccines work? The idea is that you give a small amount of a harmless form of a disease or something that mimics that disease in the case of messenger RNA, then your body makes antibodies to fight it off. Then that means if you encounter that disease again, your body is already ready, because now your body has antibodies to fight that disease. That means your immune system will take it on. How do the mRNA vaccines work? The messenger RNA, for the spike protein of coronavirus, when we're injected, it goes into the cell of the muscle, right? And it uses, in the cell cytoplasm, it uses the cell's ribosomes and the cell's enzymes to produce this spike protein. This spike protein, our body now recognizes it as foreign. So the spike protein is representing the coronavirus, and our body now produces antibodies, and our body's fighting mechanism is like you have woken them up. The T killer cells and the T helper cells come on to get ready for the battle. Messenger RNA, the starting point of translation. Those of us that studied biology in school, we all know about DNA, double-stranded, right? The double-stranded DNA can take a little bit of genetic material and say, okay, I want to produce protein that is so and so. And it gets an RNA, which is single-stranded. It is transcribed into an RNA. That RNA is now translated into amino acids. You see how we have here GUA. These three makes one amino acid, UGC, that makes another amino acid. And these amino acids now form a polypeptide chain. And this polypeptide chain can collapse and become the protein That is really the idea of this messenger RNA technology. So once it's done, the messenger RNA itself is destroyed because it has done its job and it's nowhere again. And the system, you know how it is, we get waste out of our body. It really doesn't harm us or do anything else. Again, this is the coronavirus, and you see how the spike protein is here. So we're thinking, okay, this is the messenger RNA right here. This is just a schematic, okay? This is the 5' region, the 3' region, the tail, and right here is where you have the code that has been embedded into this messenger RNA. Once it goes into a cell and produces and uses this code to produce the spike protein, it is destroyed and it's no longer there. So was the process rushed? I say yes, it was an accelerated process because of the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic in the whole world. Schools shut down, workplaces were closed, even we couldn't buy stuff. Everybody was a witness to it. The government decided to form this unit called the Operation Warp Speed to accelerate the vaccine process. Usual vaccine process takes maybe 73 months or even more. I want you all to look at this diagram. There was no shortcut, like nothing was cut out of the process. It is just that it was accelerated. So if you look here, right here is like where you do the research and development, the preclinical trials, and this is the first human trial, and that's the phase 1, and then phase 2, phase 3. And if you look here, what they did was they accelerated this. They did the research and development. Remember, I've said that this platform for the messenger RNA has been in the works for 30 years. So it's not like they started it brand new or from scratch, okay? So they had something to build on. Now, they did the phase 1, and they found out that the phase 1 human trial, it was safe in humans. The phase 2 tells you, okay, it can produce the antibodies to fight the virus. And phase 3 is where you do a larger study to prove that it actually works. So what you will notice in this diagram is at phase 2 and phase 3, they started production of the vaccine already once they found out that it was safe in humans. This was so that they will not waste time once they finish this study to be able to get the vaccines to people. The reason they were able to do this is because the federal government gave them the money. Normally, manufacturing companies will not go into production until they are sure that the vaccines work. But here, the federal government said, don't worry about the money, produce the vaccine. If it doesn't work, we are taking the financial risk. So the pharmaceuticals went ahead, started manufacturing while they are doing the phase 2 and phase 3 trials. But nobody got the vaccine until they proved that it was okay and that it actually worked. Normal vaccine process I've just described, right? No corners were cut. Usual large studies, you could have maybe 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. 4,000 to 5,000 is a large study. But you see what has happened with the coronavirus vaccine is that Pfizer was able to get 37,000 people to go into this study. Moderna was able to get 30,000. AstraZeneca got 30,000. Janssen, that is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that was just approved yesterday by the FDA, got 60,000 people to go through the phase 3 trials. So this is to tell you the weight of the data behind this vaccine. Were minorities included in the studies? Absolutely. We had 10% of Black people in the study. 8% were Asians. 26% were Hispanics. And then 51% were males and 49% were females. Is the vaccine safe? Yes. The current COVID-19 vaccines went through rigorous processes to ensure safety. The systems that are put in place by CDC and FDA, they're actually also independent panels that do peer reviews that go through this. There is no way one person can affect all these different phases. According to Bloomberg News, as I think a couple of days ago, more than 220 million people or million doses of the vaccine have been administered worldwide. In America, we've had more than 70 million doses that have been given at this time. And for the most part, majority of the people had the simple side effects like soreness and aches and stuff like that. Is the vaccine effective in all populations? Yes. It is actually 100% effective in the Black population, 94.4% effective in the Hispanic population, and 95.2% effective in white population. For people older than 75 years old, it was 100% efficacious. For people greater than 65, it was 94.7%. For people greater than 55, it was 93.7%. And for people 16 to 55, it was 95.6%. For male, it was 96% efficacious, and for females, it was 94% efficacious. So overall vaccine efficacy was 94.6%. I've heard people say, oh, 666, mark of the beast, have something to do with the vaccine. That's absolutely a lie. The COVID-19 vaccine has nothing to do with 666 and mark of the beast, period. It is unfortunate that some people have been inducing fear amongst members of our communities with baseless lies that could endanger our health. You see, people say the vaccine has microchip. That is also not true. The COVID-19 vaccine does not contain microchip. It is a false narrative being propagated by some highly misinformed people. This misinformation may actually become harmful to the health of members of our communities if it prevents us from protecting ourselves and our families from the COVID-19. So, explain the use of hydrogel nanotechnology to deliver the messenger RNA use. Does it mean that that contains microchips? You see, because of the hydrogel nanotechnology that was used to deliver the messenger RNA, people are like, oh yeah, that's the, you know, the microchips, they are nanotechnology. See, nano just means tiny. So lipid nanoparticles means very tiny fat molecules. To be clear, there is no microchips in the messenger RNA vaccine. Hydrogen nanotechnology describes the technology that was used in using the lipid nanoparticles in keeping the messenger RNA more stable. Remember when I was presenting earlier and I talked about the messenger RNA being unstable. So we use the lipid nanoparticles to wrap the messenger RNA, which is like a fat bubble, and put the messenger RNA in the middle of that bubble and keep it stable. If you don't do that, the messenger RNA runs the risk of destroying what we call denature. Some people say that the government is going to track us. Now, I want to show you what some people said about this. You see, the Pfizer vaccine needed ultra low temperatures for shipping and handling until you get it to people. So they had to protect this by making sure that the package is kept at that temperature. So they have like this package here, where they have like 5 of these boxes and they put it in this other big box, and they use this big box to put it in the bigger box that has dry ice. This dry ice has this temperature monitor that is USB enabled to track. It's like a tracking device to track this package. To track this package, it's inserted in the dry ice to track the package wherever this package is. So when you get this package that has the vaccine and you remove it from this box, they cannot track this vaccine anymore. The tracking device that's put in the dry ice is meant to track the package. Again, that's why I'm showing this diagram. So this medicine that is in this bottle, that's the vaccine, there's no way the government can track it once you get it out of this box. And then talk less of when you put it in us, it cannot track you. What are the common side effects of COVID-19 vaccine? On the arm where you take the shot, usually you can have pain or swelling or soreness. Throughout of the rest of your body, you might have fever, tiredness, chills. Some people say they have headache. I did have a little headache after my second shot early January. Helpful tips: if you have pain or discomfort, talk to your doctor about taking an over-the-counter medicine such as ibuprofen or acetaminophen. I did take ibuprofen, and in case somebody has the question about if that's going to decrease the efficacy of the vaccine, no, that's not going to decrease the efficacy of the vaccine. Now, to reduce pain and discomfort where you got the shot, you can apply a clean, cool, wet washcloth over the area. You can use your arm more, exercise it, and hopefully the pain will subside. And to reduce your discomfort from fever, drink plenty of fluids, dress lightly. Are there serious side effects to the messenger RNA vaccine, the Pfizer, BioNTech, and the Moderna vaccines? Absolutely. The serious problems from the vaccine can happen, but they are rare. CDC has learned of reports that some people have experienced severe allergic reactions that are known as anaphylaxis. Now, so after getting a COVID-19 vaccine, some people that got anaphylaxis, a lot of these people already have history of allergic reactions. And so as an example, an allergic reaction is considered severe when a person needs to be treated with epinephrine or EpiPen, or if they must go to the hospital. In case some people are interested in the recent mutant strains in the news. What we need to understand is that the recent mutations that were identified in the UK, which is the B117, and South Africa is the 501 V2, and Brazil B1128, are all concerning. But the most concerning of them all is the E484K found in South Africa and Brazil, because these mutations seem to be having the ability of the immune system, affect the ability of the immune system to recognize the virus after natural infection or vaccination. So we should keep that in mind. At this point, I'm just going to stop to see if people have questions, because I have a lot of slides, but I don't want to bore people. Thank you.
Just to talk about the vaccination, people need to know the type of credentials that you bring to the table so that they know you're just not off the street talking about vaccine. They need to know your title, what work you do.
Yes, I am an infectious disease specialist. I am the medical director of infectious disease specialist of Baton Rouge. I'm also the medical director of Baton Rouge Multi-Specialty Care Center. I am the president of the United Nigerian Women Association. I am the chair of Association of Nigerian Physicians in the Americas, Louisiana chapter. I am the chair of the Association of Nigerian Physicians in the Americas National Infectious Disease Committee, as well as the chair of AMPA COVID-19 Task Force.
So you all can know and understand that she brings a lot of credentials to the table, and she was telling that she is a president of the Association of Nigerian Physicians in America, the Louisiana chapter. So all of the Nigerian physicians, are right at her disposal. But she's gone to school. She has the credentials to talk about the vaccine. She, as you can see, she's passionate about it. And Dr. Gray, I have a few questions because, in our community, there's a mistrust, a distrust about the government in terms of, they're going to try to vaccinate us. What are they trying to do? Sterilize us? What are they trying to do? Hurt us? What are they trying to do? Put something in our arms so they can keep up with us? And you're telling us that that's just not the case. The vaccine that is rolling out is actually there to help us, protect us from something that is trying to kill us. So that is very important. How do we get around that though, Doc? Because the government has a history of years of doing stuff to Black folks, putting us in jail illegally, coming to our community, redlining us so that we won't be able to get nice and nice homes. Even in the medical clinic, I'm on the governor's task force of health disparities, and one of the subcommittees rolled out that there was actually some discrimination in terms of healthcare and access to healthcare. So how can we get past all of that to say that this particular time they're going to treat us fairly, they're treating us correctly, and they're doing something that's going to benefit us? How do we get around that?
So the government is aware of that. And what has happened in the past and continues to happen today is that we see the discrimination against Black people. But these vaccines were produced for everybody. So if they produce it, it is going to not only, if it's supposed to kill Black people, it will also kill white people. Because remember now, because in some of our neighborhoods, Black neighborhoods, where they are keeping the vaccine and the Black people are hesitating to go take it, white people are coming to those neighborhoods and getting the vaccine. So if that vaccine is meant to kill us, it'll kill the white people. And I don't see any white person dying from taking the vaccine. So we should trust the vaccine. There were Black people that were involved in this whole process. They're not going to be there and they're trying to kill their own people. And then, I have taken the vaccine myself. So I think the government cannot do that right now as we speak. We know of the things that have happened in the past, but there's too many processes now that have been put in place that it is too obvious for anybody to be trying to kill Black people using this vaccine. So I think my brothers and sisters should trust the science behind it and get our own people protected, because you see, it is killing Black people more than the white people. And then the white people are the ones getting the vaccine more than the Black people, because we truly do not trust the system. And that's because it has happened to Black people. It's usually the Black communities that get the things, discrimination and all that stuff. So we are right by discriminating about those, by being distrustful about the system. But I can assure our people, please, when it's your turn, go and get the vaccine. Protect yourself and your family.
Dr. Gertie, what are the numbers? I think when I looked, they said that the numbers were, I think, approaching 500,000 plus persons in America that had died from the coronavirus. I remember when it first took off, the president then said if he holds the numbers under 240,000 people, the deaths under 240,000, he had done a good job. I think office we had already at 400,000 persons, and that's in less than a year, or maybe a little over a year's time, that we've reached the 500,000 deaths mark. And a lot of those are numbers, but those are somebody's mama, somebody's daddy, somebody's grandma, somebody's brother, somebody's sister. That was some neighbor. That was some persons that we can touch. I know in the NAACP, we had some friends of mine that died from the coronavirus, all up and down our organizational structure. I know in the Church of God in Christ, in their organizational structure, a lot of persons died from the coronavirus. One thing that we do, and it was hard for us to kind of stop doing, we're a hugging, loving, kissing type of people. And we hug and kiss. We get together for everything. We get together for celebrations, parties, birthdays, deaths. We get together and fellowship. And this coronavirus had us rethinking that. And so even young people, which is as I understand, is the super spreaders now of the young people. How do we get the message to those that you can no longer still get together and party and hold up signs and bump and whatever, grind, whatever they do, and go home, because once they do that, they're taking the virus back to their loved ones. And if the person with some underlying comorbidities, or if you don't, if your system is weak or if your system is strong, you're subject to catch the coronavirus. And how do we get to the young people? What do we do to start? Because I know the government has a rollout of priorities, but how do we get them to understand vaccinating our communities is not the same as vaccinating their communities?
So I actually, you remember we are trying to get the state of Louisiana to vaccinate Black people as long as they are eligible, whether it be 18 years old or older, regardless, because Black people, the Black race is considered a risk factor as far as I'm concerned, because we are the ones that are doing the frontline jobs a lot of times, and our people are more exposed. That's one way of trying to, I think, will actually help in curtailing this stuff in the Black community. People that are willing to take the vaccine, they should give them the vaccine. Also, we should talk to ourselves, churches, our pastors. Let's explain it to our communities, especially the young people. The young people's immune system might be strong enough so they can get the coronavirus and may not even have any symptoms at all. And they home, and then maybe grandma or their mom have comorbidities. Maybe they have diabetes or hypertension or some other medical problems, and they get it. And they get sick, end up in the hospital with severe disease. Some people even die. Like you were talking about losing people that you know. I have lost friends in this COVID fight. Friends that are actually doctors. I've lost friends that are not doctors. I've lost family members. So this is hitting our communities really hard. And we all need to take it to heart. We all need to talk to ourselves. Pastors, preachers, they should be talking to the clergy should be talking to their congregation. Black people, we are at risk. I consider as a risk factor. And we also, community organizations, should be pushing the state to make sure that an 18-year-old Black young man that comes in to get the vaccination should get it and not have to wait for the age or comorbidity, because they are at the risk of taking it home to grandma.
Yeah. Doc, I want people to know too, I'm gonna be transparent. I've had the vaccine too.
Me too.
I've had the virus about a year ago, but I got the vaccine also. When I work in the healthcare field, long-term care, and I got the vaccine. I did not hesitate, but I also took my mother, who's 84 years old, lives with me. I took her to get the vaccine because she's had the virus. She had a slight form of it, but I had to protect her because I know, they said you can't get the virus again, and then there's variants that come through there, and it said that this vaccine works on the variants. So to protect my mother, protect me, protect other members of my family. I did not want to roll the dice and say that I could protect myself or I have enough in me that would protect everybody. And so I'm like you, Doc. I'm urging those to get out and take this vaccine. But the other question, Doc, is the mask wearing. You know, I know a lot of people don't like wearing the mask. How long can we wear them? How long should we wear the mask? And I've taken the vaccine and I still wear a mask. What do you say about that?
So the mask issue, after you take the vaccine, we still say wear masks, do physical distancing, wash your hands frequently, all those stuff, because even though you are now protected, the people around you are not protected. So we need to continue wearing the mask and doing the physical distancing and all that hand washing until a lot of us in our communities have taken the vaccine. Then we can start relaxing those rules.
Yeah, I see in some states that they've already relaxed the rules, saying you don't have to wear the mask anymore, you don't have to social distance. Let's come on and go. It's business as usual. But the coronavirus is not being eradicated. It's still out there. As a matter of fact, I just got a text today. One of my members in another town, another city, has died. You know, the coronavirus is still dead. It's still killing people. I didn't on the news today to see how many persons died today. But the vaccine has been around. I know the vaccine has been around for at least 30 days, 2 or 3 months. People are still dying. So we must do something to stem the tide. And how long do you think should we continue to? How long do you think? What is the recommendation that we'll still be fighting the virus, wearing a mask before we get back to some normalcy in our communities? How long do you think?
As soon as we get enough people in the communities to be vaccinated, if we get majority of the people, I know Dr. Fauci says 70 to 85%. I don't think they know the actual percentage, but you have to have a lot of our people vaccinated, because you have to hear the herd immunity. You get herd immunity when majority of the people in the community are already vaccinated. That means that they cannot transmit the virus, or even if they transmit the virus, most of the people that are in the room are already vaccinated. So the virus is going to be, the power of the virus will be diminished. If we can do that, we will be able to eradicate the current condition. Now, the virus may still be hanging around, but it will be most likely not the way it has been in the last 1 year. So we don't know the exact time, but I'm thinking that that's why we are doing this, right? If we can talk to those of us that are hesitating from taking the vaccine to go and get the vaccine, then we can protect our communities, and then we can get back to close to normalcy, close to the way we used to be. Now, whether we will go back to exactly how we were before 2020, I am not sure, but we will get somewhere close to it.
Right. You know, I know in Louisiana, we can't wait till the festivals. A lot of people miss the Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras is one of those times where people really let their hair down. But I think if they remember last year, they said Mardi Gras was probably the spreader, because we had people from all over the world that descended on New Orleans to partake in the Mardi Gras festivities and went back to their respective countries and states and spread it amongst their family and friends and even person they didn't know. And so during the Mardi Gras season, everything was shut down to ensure that did not happen again. Football season is about to come back around, the spring football. And I'm telling people too, Doc, wear your mask, wash your hands, put sanitizer on your hands. It's always best to be safe than to be sorry. Our community has taken a big hit as a result of the coronavirus. There have been a lot of deaths, a lot of suffering, even if you didn't die. The coronavirus caused our loved ones to suffer and still have debilitating after effects of the virus. Some are left with lingering coughs, compromised immune systems, vision impaired, all kind of stuff. Some of them have mental issues because of the virus. The virus affected us so bad. So we have to take all of that in consideration when we try to get back out and get back to normalcy. What do you say about that, Doc? You think that at some point in time, our bodies will be healed from the virus at all?
So what we know about the virus now is it leaves some knowledge gaps. Okay. So our hope is that if most of us in the community get vaccinated, who knows? Maybe we'll be able to do Mardi Gras next year. Who knows? So, but there are people that are having long-term complications as a result of getting COVID and surviving. Meanwhile, some other people are doing fine. We really have to wait to see the long-term effects of this COVID in the future. You know, I tell about a colleague of mine who describes COVID-19 and the vaccination as like you're building a plane and you're flying it at the same time. So a lot of it is still being built. We're still finding more information, more data. The one thing I don't want to do is give anybody any misinformation. I want to tell people what we know, and I want to be honest to say what we don't know. What we are hoping right now is that if most of us in our communities get the vaccination before the end of the year, we may be able to get back to some semblance of normalcy. And that means, who knows, Mardi Gras next year might be in the calendar.
All right, Doc, I'm gonna go down to Mardi Gras with you then, Doc. If the coast is clear and that's a green light, I'm telling you, we're going down with Doc. She's she's an infection control specialist, and we're gonna be riding with you in the car. But Doc, we appreciate it. You know, we want people to know that we're serious about them getting vaccinated. You know, if you don't want to get vaccinated for yourself, think about your loved ones. Think about those that you love dearly, that you don't want to spread it with, and also think about those loved ones that have succumbed to it, that have died as a result of the virus. So, you know, there's enough reason right there for you to get vaccinated. If you're a father of a household, a mother of a household, think about your loved ones. Go get them vaccinated. I know it goes to 18 at some point in time. We'll talk about those that are a little bit younger. Maybe, Doc, you want to talk about it. But the schools, we're saying the schools should not open properly until everybody's vaccinated, talking about not only the teachers, but cafeteria workers, bus drivers, crossing guards, paraprofessionals, secretaries, you know, wherever they may be, coaches, wherever they may be, assistants, get vaccinated, as well as those children, because, you know, at some point in time, you know, the teachers, when they're talking to one another, when they're out watching the students, you know, they can catch the virus or spread it. Or spread it to the children, and the children got strong systems, but go home and take it to their parents and grandparents with a weaker system. So we want to make sure everybody gets vaccinated. This is the time we're celebrating Black History. Black History should be a time for reflection. Black History should be a time where we think about where we're going. And it shouldn't be, the only thought in our mind shouldn't be going to the grave. It should be living. It should be enjoying. It should be loving. And we can take care of all of that if we take time to go get vaccinated. So, Doc, I will give you the last word on this topic.
Yes, I want our people to remember to continue wearing the face mask and doing physical distancing, educating each other about what's happening with this COVID-19 and vaccination. I think that Walgreens and CVS, they have it now. You can go online. I think that you can actually book an appointment online. A lot of places in the state of Louisiana, it's supposed to be free. If you don't have insurance, don't let that stop you. Please go out there, get registered. Nobody's going to ask you for to pay for it because the government has paid for this vaccine already. If you go book an appointment in Walgreens and CVS close to you, if they're not close to you, I know that the federal government is about to start sending mobile units to different communities. Please take the opportunity. The health units in every community should have the vaccination. And you go over there, even if they ask for your insurance. If you don't have insurance, don't let that stop you. That should not be a reason why you don't get the vaccination. Everybody should be able to get the vaccination. You do not have to pay any copay. You don't have to pay any money to get the vaccination. Also, for the people that get COVID, if you have comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, I want you to know that there is treatment. The same treatment former President Trump got is available and is underutilized. Talk to your doctor to see if they can give you that treatment. You don't need to be admitted in the hospital. All you need to do is get it outpatient in an infusion center. Please, please do not let your loved ones die. If you treat it early, you don't need to be admitted in the hospital. If you treat it early, it doesn't need to be severe. If you treat it early, you don't need to die from it. Let us beat COVID. Go, people. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc, man. That is wonderful, Doc. I tell you, fired up, ready to work, Doc. I appreciate every word. I can tell you that fall on deaf ear, fell on fertile ground. So you all heard it straight from our doctor. Dr. Gurney says, don't let money stop you. Go get the vaccine. Go to your local pharmacy, go get vaccinated. If you're in an area where they don't have a pharmacy, call your health clinic, your health department. you should be able to get vaccinated. I said too, and my partner in this fight, Eugene Collins, has been vaccinated. Eugene said get vaccinated. But for those of you who also know, get vaccinated, and don't forget to register to vote. We have an election coming up, a mighty important election coming up. We want you all safe. We want you all to be able to vote. There's stuff in place that will protect you from the COVID while you go vote. So there we have extended voting time. We have early voting time about to start. Take advantage of those. During early voting, you don't encounter so many people because people normally wait for the primary election. But please go get vaccinated and go vote. There's power in the vote. So thank you all. Thank you, Eugene, again for being on point, for being on time, for taking care of people's business.
All right, all right. So we have learned about historic preservation here today. And now we've got some good information from Dr. Gertie. And Dr. Gertie, let me tell you, I've heard a lot of good things about you lately. People say they're bringing folks over there to you, bringing some kids over there to you, say they just love your service over there, Dr. Gertie. And I say Dr. Gertie is one of my favorite people. I don't have to come over there and see you one day. You're supposed to be talking about that. They say you the bee's knees over there, Doc.
Thank you, Eugene.
No problem, Doc. You've been here with the NAACP presidents. This is your local branch president, Eugene Collins. Alongside you with our statewide president, President Michael McClanahan. You've been on here with two of the best, if not the best, radio MCs in Baton Rouge, probably the state of Louisiana, probably the nation. You know what I'm saying? Might be in North America. Right. So you've been on here at the WTQT 106.1, Baton Rouge's best gospel station. Next up, we have Anchor David Hammond in Chosen Disciples. Talk to y'all next week. All right, y'all.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Dr. Gray. I'll call you later.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.